Welcome to Bookish Mind, Season 3, Episode 16, where we explore why educating the mind is not enough unless we also teach the heart. Today, we're taking a deep dive into a topic that maybe challenges how we usually think about intelligence. Emotional intelligence. You might instinctively think, intelligence is about IQ, academics.
Right, book smarts.
But our sources, they make this really compelling case that emotional intelligence, EQ, can actually matter more.
Especially when you're talking about shaping young lives, preparing them for life, really.
Precisely. We'll be looking at some pretty groundbreaking material. Takes us right inside classrooms doing things differently.
Yeah, it's not your standard memorization. It's about feelings, relationships, the whole emotional side of being a kid.
So the goal isn't just abstract knowledge.
No, it's about practical tools.
Yeah.
Skills to navigate the messy parts of life.
Okay, so our mission for this deep dive.
Mm-hmm.
First, we want to understand how this emotional literacy stuff is actually taught.
Mm-hmm. What does it look like day to day?
Second, does it work? We need to see the real-world impact, concrete example.
Absolutely.
And finally, why is integrating these skills into education maybe more critical now than ever?
That's the big question, isn't it? Okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it. We start at the Nueva Learning Center. It's a private school, San Francisco. And they have this course called Self-Science.
Mm-hmm.
Picture this.
Mm-hmm.
Fifth graders sitting in a circle. Roll call isn't just here.
No, it's different. They check in with a number 1 to 10. How are they feeling? Energy level, spirits.
Right. You might hear someone say, 10, I'm jazzed, it's Friday.
Or maybe 9, excited, but a little nervous. It's an emotional check-in.
And what's fascinating is the subject itself.
Yeah.
It is feelings, their own feelings in relationships.
Yeah, Karen Stone McCown, who developed it, she says, learning doesn't take place in isolation from kids' feelings.
That makes sense.
She argues being emotionally literate is just as important as, say, math or reading.
So instead of ignoring stuff like kids feeling left out or envy or, playground disagreements,
they use it. Those become the teaching moments. The curriculum revolves around these real issues.
Okay, so to really get a feel for it, let's look at a specific lesson. It's called the Cooperation Squares game.
Right. So kids get pieces of jigsaw puzzles, squares, and they have to assemble them silently.
Sounds tricky.
It is. One group finishes fast. Another group, Sean, Fairley, and Rahman, they're struggling, getting frustrated.
Okay, I can picture that.
And this is where the teaching happens. Rahman, he's clearly frustrated. He puts puzzle pieces up to his eyes like a mask, clowning around a bit.
So the teacher, Joanne Varga, what does she do?
She doesn't shut it down. She encourages the groups who finish to offer specific hints, not just solve it for them.
Okay.
And another student, Dagan, helps the struggling group see the gestalt, like the overall pattern.
A bigger picture.
Exactly. And boom, they get it. They succeed.
But wait, there's more, right? This is where it gets really interesting.
Yeah, because then a whole discussion blows up between Rahman and Tucker, who was observing the group.
About the rules.
About whether offering a piece counts as gesturing, which wasn't allowed. Tucker's kind of argumentative.
And Rahman's pushing back hard.
Right, and Varga steps in again, but not to criticize, to coach.
How does she do that? That seems like a tough moment.
It is, but she guides Tucker, suggests a calmer tone, and she realizes Rahman's anger isn't just about the rule.
Oh, what else is going on?
He'd seen Tucker's observation sheet, which labeled him disruptive.
Ouch. Okay.
So Varga validates Rahman's feelings. She says something like, it's not pleasant to have a label like disruptive put on you.
That's powerful. Acknowledging his experience.
Exactly. And then she helps him explain why he was clowning around with the pieces. She suggests maybe when you put those pieces up, it seems like you were feeling frustrated and wanted to lighten things up.
Helping him articulate his intent.
Yes. And the outcome, both boys nod, they feel heard, they actually leave together.
Wow.
Varga points out later, conflict often starts with assumptions, not communicating, jumping to conclusions.
So the aim isn't zero conflict.
Not at all. It's learning the skills assertiveness, listening to resolve it before it escalates.
But how do you teach that when someone's already upset? That seems like the hardest part.
Well, Varga notes that anyone, adult or kid, needs help being a self-observer when they're emotional.
True.
The amazing thing here is these fifth graders, in the heat of the moment, they didn't resort to fighting. They worked through it with coaching. That's a huge win.
Yeah, it shows it's about building those foundational skills, self-regulation, social skills, Stuff IQ doesn't really cover.
Exactly. And our sources really emphasize how crucial these are, not just for getting along, but for learning, too.
So self-science isn't just about these, like, classroom games or squabbles.
No, it goes deeper. They have this daily concerns of the day circle.
Okay, what's that?
It's a safe space. If a student checks in with a low number, feeling down, peers can ask gently, "Do you want to talk about why you feel that way?"
So they actually talk about real-life worries.
Yes. Whether it's teasing in the younger grades or later on, pressures about dating, drugs, bullying, these big, often secret issues kids face.
Stuff they might normally keep bottled up.
Right. But here, they become topics for open discussion, for problem solving together. The curriculum flexes to address what's actually happening in their lives.
So these living examples are key.
Absolutely. And the core skills they teach, the ABCs of emotional intelligence, they map directly onto prevention skills. Things like,
Like what?
well, self-awareness, recognizing your feelings, having words for them, seeing how thoughts, feelings, reactions are linked.
Okay, makes sense.
Then managing emotions, understanding what's behind a feeling like hurt causing anger, handling anxiety, anger, sadness constructively.
Important stuff.
Also, responsibility for your choices and actions. Empathy, understanding others, seeing their perspective.
And relationships, presumably.
Big time. Relationships. Good listening and not jumping to judgment, being assertive but not aggressive. Cooperation, conflict resolution, negotiation.
Wow, that's a comprehensive list. It sounds like skills for life, not just school.
It really is. You can imagine an 8th grade Socratic exam where they're asked, how would you help a friend who's being pressured to try drugs? Or how do you deal with stress?
Life is the final exam, in that sense.
Exactly.
Now, some people listening might think, okay, that sounds great, but that's a fancy private school. Does this work elsewhere?
That's a fair question. But the sources take us to Augusta Lewis Troop Middle School in New Haven. It's an inner-city public school, primarily Black and Hispanic students. They have a social competence program teaching basically the same curriculum. But the connection for these kids, it's often more direct, more raw. The issues are right there in their daily lives.
So it's not just a nice to have for them.
Definitely not. Mary Ellen Collins, the facilitator there, she put it really bluntly. I can't see only teaching academic skills anymore with the problems these kids face just in living.
That hits hard.
In one 5th grade class, the teacher asks, how many people ever felt frustrated? Every single hand goes up.
Wow. Universal experience.
And they even learn to identify emotions by mimicking facial muscles based on Paul Ekman's research on universal expressions.
That sounds almost like college-level psychology.
It does. But think about the practical use. It can help kids avoid misinterpreting cues, maybe prevent fights based on a misread look, or help someone struggling internally distinguish between different feelings, like anger versus anxiety.
So it's really practical, even these seemingly academic bits.
Very practical. Now, given how packed school schedules are, there's also a move towards blending this in, not always having a separate class.
Integration. How does that work?
You weave the emotional lessons into existing subjects, reading, health, even math sometimes, like teaching impulse control as a study skill.
Okay, give me an example.
So in a reading class, maybe you discuss Frog and Toad are friends. You don't just talk plot, you talk about the feelings. Friendship, teasing, self-consciousness. What does Toad need? How does Frog feel?
Using literature to explore emotions.
And it changes discipline, too. Instead of just yelling, stop pushing in line, a teacher might turn it into a mini lesson on fairness. How can we solve this fairly? Let's guess a number.
Teaching them problem-solving strategies they can use themselves.
Exactly. Fostering self-governance, not just obedience.
Timing seems important here too, right? You can't teach advanced conflict resolution to a kindergartner.
Absolutely. It needs to be age-appropriate and repeated. Some argue you should start really early, like infancy, with parent coaching.
And programs like Head Start.
When they're well-run, yes. The data shows long-term benefits, emotionally and socially, way into adulthood. Fewer problems, better outcomes.
Dr. David Hamburg from the Carnegie Corporation, he highlights specific times when this is crucial.
He does. Ages 6 to 11, starting grade school, he calls it a crucible, where self-worth gets tied to achievement. Kids need skills like delaying gratification, emotional control.
Makes sense. That's a big transition.
And then the next big one, moving into middle school or junior high. That's often when self-confidence dips, peer pressure ramps up.
A tough time for many kids.
Yeah. And Hamburg notes these emotional literacy classes really help kids navigate those pressures. They're less troubled by the social dynamics, the academic stress, the temptations.
So how does the teaching adapt, like in that New Haven program?
Well, Younger grades might use a feelings cube, pictures of faces, linking words to emotions, simple vocabulary building.
Okay.
By 4th and 5th grade, peer stuff is huge, so they focus more on empathy, managing anger. They use that stoplight method for impulse control.
The red, yellow, green light thing.
Right. Red, stop, calm down, think. Yellows, say the problem, goal, think solutions, consequences. Green, go with the best plan. Very concrete steps.
That seems really useful. And older kids.
By 9th grade, they're tackling more complex social situations, learning to see things from multiple perspectives, ambiguity, nuance.
It really builds over time. Many of these programs, didn't they start because of concerns about violence?
A lot of them did, yes, like the Resolving Conflict Creatively program in New York City. Linda Lentieri, the founder, she talks about giving kids choices beyond just being passive or aggressive.
Teaching them to stand up for themselves without violence.
Exactly. Lifelong skills, she calls them.
And a key part of that is student mediators, right?
Yes. Training kids, even in elementary school, to help other kids resolve conflicts, playground fights, name-calling, threats.
How does that mediation work?
The mediators guide the kids in conflict, help them calm down first, then state their side. Critically, they have to listen to the other person and paraphrase what they heard.
Making sure they actually heard each other.
Right. Then they brainstorm solutions together, find one they can both agree on.
There was a quote from a former student mediator, Angel Perez.
Yeah, he said it changed my way of thinking. He used to think fighting was the only option, but the program gave him a more positive outlook. That's powerful.
It really is. And other programs, like PASS SS.
Path-based parents and teachers helping students. That one proactively targets behaviors linked to later problems like impulsivity, aggression, but crucially,
They teach it to all students.
yes, to avoid stigma, everyone learns impulse control, recognizing emotions. Their curriculum has lessons on like 50 different feelings.
50. Wow.
And anger management, the key message is, all feelings are okay, but some reactions are not. Plus, building friendships, because social rejection is a risk factor.
The impact seems really tangible. You mentioned that story about Lamont.
Yeah, Tim Shriver from the New Haven program told that story. Lamont, a former student, shot 9 times, whispering from his hospital bed, "Shrive, I'm going to use the SOCS method."
That 4-step problem-solving thing they teach.
Yeah. It's heartbreaking, but it shows how vital these skills are, how they stick, how much they're needed.
And there are other examples,
Yeah.
beyond the tragic ones.
Absolutely. A girl kicked out for fighting comes back and learns to handle conflict constructively. A principal sees suspensions drop dramatically, like from 106 down to 26 in a year as these classes roll out.
That's a huge drop.
And it's not just anecdotes. Objective evaluations show widespread benefits: better self-awareness, better emotional management,
Less aggression, fewer put-downs.
more positive feelings, kids are more responsible, more focused. And here's the kicker for schools worried about test scores.
What's the academic impact?
The data shows these programs improve academic achievement scores and school performance.
Really?
Well, think about it. Anything that helps kids with impulse control, focus, managing stress, paying attention, being responsible, that's going to help them learn better. It actually enhances the school's main mission.
So it's not taking time away from academics, it's supporting them.
Exactly. It's an investment that pays off academically, too.
This really shifts the perspective, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It suggests schools have a bigger role, especially if maybe family life isn't always providing that foundation.
It does. Schools become this crucial place for learning these essential life lessons. And it's not just about having a specific class.
Right, you mentioned the teachers themselves.
Yeah, how teachers handle their own classrooms every single day. They become models of emotional competence or incompetence. Every interaction teaches something.
So the school itself needs to be an agent for this.
Explicitly, yes. And it works best when it's reinforced everywhere. Classroom, playground, ideally at home, too, getting parents involved.
Creating a whole caring community culture.
Exactly, where kids feel respected, bonded, safe, sometimes even bringing in community mentors for kids who need extra support.
You know, all this talk about self-discipline, empathy, it sounds a lot like what people used to call character.
It absolutely circles back to that. Amitai Etzioni calls character the psychological muscle that moral conduct requires.
The muscle, I like that.
And John Dewey, the philosopher, he believed moral education works best when it's taught through real events, not just abstract lessons, which is exactly what these programs do.
So self-discipline, controlling urges that builds will.
That's the foundation. And being able to move beyond just your own needs, that self-centered focus, that opens the door to empathy.
To really listening, seeing someone else's perspective.
Which then leads to caring, helping others, tolerance, accepting differences, all crucial stuff.
And you argue these are fundamental for democracy.
I think the sources strongly suggest that. These are the basic arts of democracy. How do we live together, respect differences, engage in productive discussion if we don't have these underlying emotional skills?
It puts things in a much broader context when you hear about, really troubling statistics. Guns being the leading cause of death for young people. Predictions of rising youth crime because kids aren't very good at avoiding disputes.
It shines a light on a huge gap, doesn't it? As a society, we haven't systematically made sure every child learns how to handle anger, resolve conflict peacefully, develop empathy, control impulses.
We've sort of left it to chance.
Exactly. And in doing that, we risk wasting that critical window while the brain is still developing, when we could be helping kids build these healthy emotional habits.
So these programs, even if they're still kind of rare.
They offer real hope, a path forward.
So wrapping this up, what's the big takeaway for someone listening?
I think it's recognizing that education can't just be about the mind. The heart, the emotions, they are absolutely central to learning and to life.
And it leaves us with that question from the source material. Shouldn't we be teaching these absolutely essential skills for life to every single child, especially now?
If not now, when?
A powerful question to end on. Thank you for diving deep with us today on The Deep Dive.